further. But here, in these wide-open spaces, there were no shadows, no corners, and no angles. Just flowers and berries for lunch, and big, fat, stupid cats grinning at him from the windowsill. Marius scowled at it. Oh, for just one street market vendor short of meat and willing not to ask too many questions. He sighed, staring out the window at Keth's perfect buttocks slowly disappearing through the flowers. When he couldn't see them any longer, and had them firmly fixed in his memory, he leaned back in his chair, yawned, and stood. Maybe it was time to get dressed, at least. There was only so long a man could lounge around the house in his undershirt before the love of his life began to suspect he wasn't quite as busy as he'd been making out. He ran a hand down Alno's back. "Another day in fucking paradise," he said, and pushed the cat out of the window. It landed between the stick-prickle bushes he'd planted there specially to catch it, hissed at him, and darted away beneath them before he could find a boot to throw. He watched it cut a purposeful swath through the flowers, and sighed again. It would spend all day hunting mice, he supposed. Gods, even the cat had something to do. Maybe the blind pig had opened its doors. He smiled. The cottage was a mile or so outside the nameless village for which the blind pig was combination post office, law court, and, most importantly, boozer. Keth would be gone all morning. Marius held his hand in front of his face and concentrated. Slowly his flesh lost its pink tones, drying out and shriveling until it lay grey and tight across his bones. He glanced over at the brass mirror nailed next to the bed. His face, dead and pockmarked, stared back with blank white eyes. Dark skin faded to a dull grey, and teeth grinned at him through lips that lay black and peeling against them. He had learned the trick 4 years ago. During that period he tried only to think of as back then. Back then it had been forced upon him by the vengeful dead. They had mistaken him for their lost king, God's representative on earth, the voice they needed to remind him that they existed, and were waiting to be harvested and carried aloft on shafts of gold to their eternal reward, blah, blah, blah bullshit. Then their mistake became clear to them, and they inflicted this withering half-death upon him as the were-guild he had to pay for not being the monarch they needed. Now it was a useful trick and nothing more. A mile between the cottage and the tavern, for example, might take him 6 minutes to run, but as a living man he'd spend over an hour catching his breath every 100 yards, pulling up lame with a stitch or a twinge in his calf, or just plain vomiting. But the dead did not need to catch their breath, and they never vomited. Without his ability to switch between normal human frailty and the untiring muscles of the dead, there was no way he'd be sinking his first pint of the morning within 7 minutes, and he'd never be back in time to pretend he'd been digging that visitor's privy he'd been promising for 2 weeks. Leaning across, he took a final glance through the window, just to make sure Keth hadn't forgotten anything and come back, and frowned. Cats don't normally run in straight lines. If forced to run at all, they do so in short bursts, enough to show that they could escape you any time at all, and that it would be far better for all concerned if you just gave up pursuit right now. Cats are bastards, and will never knowingly pass up an opportunity to taunt you. There is nothing more ludicrous than the sight of a fully grown human stumbling after an animal that saunters to a stop every 6 feet just to lick itself and make sure it's still being chased, and the furry little shits know it. That's why they do it. At least Marius was pretty sure it was why Alno did it to him. Cats certainly never picked the shortest journey between A and anywhere else if they could help it. But Alno was doing just that. Marius could see the flower heads waving as he raced through them. The cat had left the house behind and was tearing at top speed across the open field beyond, straight towards the spot where Marius had watched Keth's buttocks finally disappear, almost as if... Before Marius was even conscious of doing so, he had placed his foot on the desk and propelled himself through the window. His heel caught the edge of the windowsill and sent him tumbling into the stick-prickle bush below, but he barely noticed. He rolled forward, made his feet, and was off at full pace, through the little gate that bounded their yard and out across the field at a flat run. He caught up